Today we'll be telling the first part of the story of Guleesh. This is Guleesh's adventures among the fairies, where he became responsible for the Princess of France. Part 2 will follow, and that is the story of how Guleesh earned the heart of his princess. Part 1. Guleesh. There was once a boy in the county Mayo. Guleesh was his name. There was the finest rath a little way off from the gable of the house, and he was often in the habit of seating himself on the fine grass bank that was running round it. One night he stood half leaning against the gable of the house and looking up into the sky and watching the beautiful white moon over his head. After he had been standing that way for a couple of hours, he said to himself, "My bitter grief that I am not gone away out of this place altogether. I'd sooner be any place in the world than here. Och, it's well for you, white moon," says he, "that's turning round as you please yourself, and no man can put you back. I wish I was the same as you." Hardly was the word out of his mouth when he heard a great noise coming like the sound of many people running together and talking and laughing and making sport, and the sound went by him like a whirl of wind, and he was listening to it going into the rath. "Musha by my soul," says he, "but you're merry enough, and I'll follow ye." What was in it but the fairy host? Though he did not know at first that it was they who were in it, but he followed them into the rath. It's there he heard the full parney and the full porney, the raplay hoot and the roolia boolia that they had there, and every man of them crying out as loud as he could, "My horse and bridle and saddle, my horse and bridle and saddle." "By my hand," said Guleesh, "my boy, that's not bad. I'll imitate ye." And he cried out as well as they, "My horse and bridle and saddle, my horse and bridle and saddle." And on the moment there was a fine horse with a bridle of gold and a saddle of silver standing before him. He leapt up on it, and the moment he was on its back, he saw clearly that the rath was full of horses and of little people going riding on them. Said a man of them to him, "Are you coming with us tonight, Guleesh?" "I am surely," said Guleesh. "If you are, come along," said the little man, and out they went all together, riding like the wind, faster than the fastest horse ever you saw hunting, and faster than the fox and the hounds at his tail. The cold winter's wind that was before them they overtook her, and the cold winter's wind that was behind them she did not overtake them, and stop nor stay of that full race did they make none, until they came to the brink of the sea. Then every one of them said, "High over cap, high over cap," and that moment they were up in the air, and before Guleesh had time to remember where he was, they were down on dry land again and were going like the wind. At last they stood still, and a man of them said to Guleesh, "Guleesh, do you know where you are now?" "Not now," said Guleesh. "You're in France, Guleesh," said he. "The daughter of the King of France is to be married tonight, the handsomest woman that the sun ever saw, and we must do our best to bring her with us, if we're only able to carry her off, and you must come with us, that we may be able to put the young girl up behind you on the horse when we'll be bringing her away, for it's not lawful for us to put her sitting behind ourselves, but you're flesh and blood, and she can take a good grip of you so that she won't fall off the horse. Are you satisfied, Guleesh, and will you do what we're telling you?" "Why shouldn't I be satisfied?" said Guleesh. "I'm satisfied surely, and anything that you will tell me to do, I'll do it without doubt." They got off their horses there, and a man of them said a word that Guleesh did not understand, and on the moment they were lifted up, and Guleesh found himself and his companions in the palace. There's a great feast going on there, and there was not a nobleman or a gentleman in the kingdom but was gathered there, dressed in silk and satin and gold and silver, and the night was as bright as the day, with all the lamps and candles that were lit, and Guleesh had to shut his 2 eyes at the brightness. When he opened them again and looked from him, he thought he never saw anything as fine as all he saw there. There were 100 tables spread out, and they're full of meat and drink on each table of them. Flesh meat and cakes and sweetmeats and wine and ale, and every drink that ever a man saw. The musicians were at the two ends of the hall, and they were playing the sweetest music that ever a man's ear heard. And there were young women and fine youths in the middle of the hall, dancing and turning and going round so quickly and so lightly that it put a surround in Guleesh's head to be looking at them. There were more there playing tricks and more making fun and laughing, for such a feast as there was that day had not been seen in France for 20 years, because the old king had no children alive, but only the one daughter, and she was to be married to the son of another king that night. 3 days the feast was going on, and the third night she was to be married, and that was the night that Guleesh and the sheehogues came, hoping if they could to carry off with them the king's young daughter. Guleesh and his companions were standing together at the head of the hall, where there was a fine altar dressed up, and 2 bishops behind it waiting to marry the girl as soon as the right time should come. Now nobody could see the sheehogues, for they said a word as they came in that made them all invisible, as if they had not been in it at all. "Tell me which of them is the king's daughter," said Guleesh, when he was becoming a little used to the noise and the light. "Don't you see her there away from you?" said the little man that he was talking to. Guleesh looked where the little man was pointing with his finger, and there he saw the loveliest woman that was, he thought, upon the ridge of the world. The rose and the lily were fighting together in her face, and one could not tell which of them got the victory. Her arms and hands were like the lime, her mouth as red as a strawberry when it is ripe, her foot was as small and as light as another one's hand. Her form was smooth and slender, and her hair was falling down from her head in buckles of gold. Her garments and dress were woven with gold and silver, and the bright stone that was in the ring on her hand was as shining as the sun. Guleesh was nearly blinded with all the loveliness and beauty that was in her, but when he looked again he saw that she was crying, and that there was the trace of tears in her eyes. "It can't be," said Guleesh, "that there's grief on her, when everybody round her is so full of sport and merriment." "Musha, then, she is grieved," said the little man, "for it's against her own will she's marrying, and she has no love for the husband she is to marry. The king was going to give her to him 3 years ago, when she was only 15, but she said she was too young, and requested him to leave her as she was yet. The king gave her a year's grace, and when that year was up, he gave her another year's grace, and then another. But a week or a day he would not give her longer, and she is 18 years old tonight, and it's time for her to marry. But indeed," says he, and he cracked his mouth in an ugly way, "indeed it's no king's son she'll marry, if I can help it." Guleesh pitied the handsome young lady greatly when he heard that, and he was heartbroken to think that it would be necessary for her to marry a man she did not like, or, what was worse, to take a nasty sheehogue for a husband. However, he did not say a word, though he could not help giving many a curse to the ill luck that was laid out for himself, to be helping the people that were to snatch her away from her home and from her father. He began thinking then what it was he ought to do to save her, but he could think of nothing. "Oh, if I could only give her some help and relief," said he, "I wouldn't care whether I were alive or dead, but I see nothing that I can do for her." He was looking on when the king's son came up to her and asked her for a kiss, but she turned her head away from him. Guleesh had double pity for her then, when he saw the lad taking her by the soft white hand and drawing her out to dance. They went round in the dance near where Guleesh was, and he could plainly see that there were tears in her eyes. When the dancing was over, the old king, her father, and her mother, the queen, came up and said that this was the right time to marry her, that the bishop was ready, and it was time to put the wedding ring on her and give her to her husband. The king took the youth by the hand, and the queen took her daughter, and they went up together to the altar, with the lords and great people following them. When they came near the altar and were no more than about 4 yards from it, the little sheehogue stretched out his foot before the girl, and she fell. Before she was able to rise again, he threw something that was in his hand upon her, said a couple of words, and upon the moment the maiden was gone from amongst them. Nobody could see her, for that word made her invisible. The little man even seized her and raised her up behind Guleesh, and the king nor no one else saw them, but out with them through the hall till they came to the door. Oh dear Mary, it's there the pity was, and the trouble, and the crying, and the wonder, and the searching, and the rook-on, when that lady disappeared from their eyes, and without their seeing what did it. Out of the door of the palace they went, without being stopped or hindered, for nobody saw them, and "My horse, my bridle and saddle," says every man of them. "My horse, my bridle and saddle," says Guleesh, and on the moment the horse was standing ready, caparisoned before him. "Now jump up, Guleesh," said the little man, "and put the lady behind you, and we will be going. The morning is not far off from us now." Guleesh raised her up on the horse's back and leapt up himself before her, and "Rise, horse," said he, and his horse and the other horses with him went in a full race until they came to the sea. "Hie over cap," said every man of them. "Hie over cap," said Guleesh, and on the moment the horse rose under him and cut a leap in the clouds and came down in Erin. They did not stop there, but went of a race to the place where was Guleesh's house in the rath, and when they came as far as that, Guleesh turned and caught the young girl in his two arms and leapt off the horse. "I call and cross you to myself, in the name of God," said he, and on the spot, before the word was out of his mouth, the horse fell down, and what was in it but the beam of a plough, of which they had made a horse, and every other horse they had, it was that way they made it. Some of them were riding an old besom, and some on a broken stick, and more on a bohalan or a hemlock stalk. The good people called out together when they heard what Guleesh said. "Oh, Guleesh, you clown, you thief, that no good may happen to you. Why did you play that trick on us?" But they had no power at all to carry off the girl, after Guleesh had consecrated her to himself. "Oh, Guleesh, isn't that a nice turn you did us, and we so kind to you? What good have we now out of our journey to France?" "Never mind yet, you clown, but you'll pay us another time for this. Believe us, you'll repent it." "He'll have no good to get out of the young girl," said the little man that was talking to him in the palace before that, and as he said the word, he moved over to her and struck her a slap on the side of the head. "Now," says he, "she'll be without talk any more. Now, Guleesh, what good will she be to you when she'll be dumb? It's time for us to go, but you'll remember us, Guleesh." When he said that, he stretched out his two hands, and before Guleesh was able to give an answer, he and the rest of them were gone into the rath out of his sight, and he saw them no more.